What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to episode 14 of our HEXAGON challenge. And today we are saying goodbye to Waitakere United here in New Zealand. It's time to move on. We've ended up winning 2 Oceanic Champions Leagues here. A pretty mighty feat. If we look here at my profile, you can see my contract has now expired. I'm still at the club, but I can now leave the club without any kind of red mark against my name. There's not going to be any kind of punishment for doing so. But I thought before we go this episode, I will kind of move on forward to our next team. But I thought it'd be nice just to have a quick look at the club, what we achieved here, and just reflect for maybe 2 or 3 minutes before we kind of plod on. I get my new team and we have a look at where we're going to end up next. So here we have a look at Waitakere. You can see here they have won 2 premierships, the ASB Premiership since we've took over. Of course, also won the Oceanic Champions League, which you can see here. We did end up winning the ASB Charity Cup as well to end the season. So all in all, the 2017-18 season was quite a memorable one, ending on a high. We did the treble if you include the Charity Cup, which is contested between the winners of the Chatham Cup and the league. I was pleased with that. It was nice to kind of end on a high. To do a treble of sorts was pretty pleasing. Of course, we came here to New Zealand with a pretty tarnished reputation, having been unable to save Beijing IT. It was pretty heartbreaking that I came here kind of looking to re-find myself as a human being. And I think we've done that here. I've got a little bit of an attachment to this team, I think it's fair to say. If we look here at our overview, you can see 851 days we've been at Waitakere. The biggest sale we made was Michael Morris. We had a number of big players come in for us. Perhaps Chettelberg, for me, the kind of most memorable player of our time here. Mark here, been a fantastic player. 19 goals and 20 assists last season is just an unreal record, and he ended up being a pretty darn good transfer for us. Anyway, if we look at our history here, you can see obviously we finished first the last 2 seasons. We won plenty of awards throughout that time, including 2 ASB Premiership Manager of the Season awards, as well as 6 Manager of the Month awards last year, and as you can see, for the month before that. And of course, last year for the 2017-18 season, we did a treble of the Oceanic Champions League, the Charity Cup and the Premiership. So all in all, to take a team who were finishing 4th place when we took over and take them to pretty much domestic dominance is pretty pleasing. In terms of where we go from here, I'm not entirely sure. If we just have a quick look at our achievements, we can look at our biography as a manager. So you can see we were born in London. We've enjoyed great success at Waitakere, lifting 2 league titles and winning 3 cup competitions. I've come in for some criticism for my reluctance to sign more New Zealand players. Instead, I've been buying them, obviously, from the USA, as you guys know. My first venture into management was with Beijing IT, and during my time with the Waitak, we've lifted the ASB Charity Cup in 2018, the ASB Premiership in 2017 and 2018, and the Oceanic Champions League back-to-back years. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how we've got on here. We needed to do something in order to save our reputation. And I think here we found a really nice job. We've done quite well here. I'm itching to, move on to our next challenge. Not sure where it's going to be just yet. You can see our reputation for winning a 2nd Champions League did increase to useful. This does work similar to player star ratings. So you have 10 ratings in all the way from 1 silver star to 5 gold stars. So at the moment we're kind of on a 3 out of 10. In terms of our profile, well, you can see here, we've improved. We definitely look like we know what we're talking about now as a coach. Unfortunately, we've not got any coaching badges as of yet. I kind of hope that wherever we end up next, they have some money so we're able to invest in that. But anyway, I think it's time to say goodbye here at Waitakere, so I am going to resign from our club. We're going to go into the wilderness. The year is 2018. It's the summer, I do believe. Yeah, it is. It's the 30th of June, and I guess I'll join you guys whenever I find my next job. It might be 3 months, it might be 1 month, it might be a day. I don't know. We'll have to stick around and see what comes our way. I'm a poet, and I didn't know it. I will join you guys in a second, and we will, I guess, have a look at what we're going to be getting up to for our next major challenge here in this HEXAGON challenge. Okay, guys, we are back. It is November. I've even got my Movember moustache growing on my manager here. And we do have a job. We are, of course, still in charge at France. If we just have a quick look there, you can see we've been winning all our games, which is pretty pleasing. We have now qualified for the Euros very, very convincingly, which is pretty pleasing. So that is happening in the summer of next year, 2019. So we have got the Under-21s European Championships to look forward to. But as I've perhaps alluded to by the fact I'm back, I have a job. You guys can see it here. And let me tell you now, when this job came available, I really wanted it. I've never managed in the USA. It's a challenge that I've really relished to do a proper MLS save, get into the drafts, into all that stuff. It's a league I know a lot of people avoid. Hopefully, as I learn a little bit about the rules and stuff, you guys all learn through watching these videos. It's going to be a bit of an adventure. And New York City have given me the job if I want to take it, which I definitely am going to be taking it. In terms of other jobs that are available, well, you can see if we look here, we were applying for a few jobs in the MLS. We applied at Orlando City where we were declined. We applied at Seattle Sounders. We got an interview, but nothing more. I even had a few job offers from China, but none of them quite felt right. And I was kind of sat around waiting, hopefully, for a club who I was particularly excited by to come in. And then I saw the New York City job come up at the end of the MLS season, and I couldn't say no. So we are going to be taking this job. I am going to try and negotiate a contract if I can. Can we get an extra year squeezed out? Maybe. Let's go with that. Boom. We now have a job. Excellent. Well, let's continue. This episode, I am going to do my first game. We are in November. The MLS season, to my knowledge, runs between March and kind of October, November time. So as a result, there's going to be a big jump kind of in the off-season that we do here because it is right at the end of the MLS season. So we have got a 3-year deal at the club, which is nice. Transfer update here. Miller and Newton on their way out. A little bit about the MLS rules. The first thing I'm actually going to do right now before I forget is I'm going to change my money to US dollars, and I'm also going to change the wages to yearly because that is how it's done in America. That's kind of how the contracts work, how they're kind of viewed by the general public. So this is going to be very different. I know for some people they're never going to have even encountered MLS before, Major League Soccer, and the rules that go with it. I'm going to do my best to break them down to my kind of general understanding. During my time when I worked on this game testing, I sat actually near some of the guys, or two guys, who actually worked entirely on the MLS and A-League kind of side of things. So I do actually know a little bit about the rules. I'm still kind of, slightly unfamiliar. I've never completed a season here in America, but I'm not going in completely blind. I'm going to do these meetings at the end of this episode off camera before I skip forward. But here we are. We are at New York City FC, and here is our team. So we do have Lampard, Pirlo and David Villa still. It's worth noting that Lampard is 40, Pirlo is 39 and Villa is 36. When is Lampard retiring? He is retiring at the end of the 2019 season. So you can see here we are in November, so it's been about 4 or 5 months that I've been waiting for a job. So Lampard's going to retire at the end of next season. Andrea Pirlo is going to be retiring. When's he going to be retiring? He's going to be retiring. Well, it says his contract expires next year. Let's just have a look. Retiring. Okay, he's retiring at the end of this year. And last but not least, David Villa, not even retiring yet. Excellent stuff. So yeah, we are in America, and as I mentioned, I fully appreciate people probably don't know the rules of kind of the US, how things work. So I'm now going to attempt to just break things down in their simplest sense. So the first thing to note is that your maximum squad size, I believe, is 28 players. Yes, it is. This is made up of designated players and then the rest of your players. These kind of other players can be broken down, but for the sake of this very basic overview, I'm going to kind of simplify this a lot. So you'll notice here we have a maximum squad salary of £500 million a year. This is kind of a budget set by the league, not your board, and it's basically the total amount of money that your entire squad can be paid, and any excess players that are over the budget, obviously they have to be cut from the side. So you have a maximum squad size of 28 players. I believe the registration windows for this are in the kind of start of the season, so around March time, and then during the summer. The way the registration works is you're allowed to register up to 28 players as long as their wages come below this wage budget and cap set here. So for example, if we had 28 players, but their squad kind of size, or squad salary, sorry, was $5.5 million, a few of these players would have to be cut from the squad to ensure we come in below budget. Now, what makes this registration different to in other leagues is all the players who are cut don't kind of sit in your squad unregistered, they are waived. And what this means is they go up into a big draft with other players who have been left out of every other team in MLS's squads, and other teams have the option to pull them into their team and kind of pick them up on a free transfer. So that's how that works. Designated players, the other thing I'll just explain briefly. Obviously, you guys will be aware there's players like Pirlo, Lampard in our example, but then you have players like Kaká and such. And these players are paid a lot more than your kind of average Joes, the other players who kind of compete in MLS. And these players are known as designated players. Now, by default, I believe each team has 2 designated player slots. It's essentially 2 wild cards, and these 2 designated players are players that their wages don't count towards your maximum squad salary. That's how teams are able to afford players like Kaká without coming in miles above budget in terms of Orlando City, for example. However, you will notice here we have 3 designated players, and of course we have David Villa, Pirlo and Lampard. So how does that work? Well, basically, teams have the option to buy a 3rd designated player spot for $150,000, and this allows them to have 1 extra wild card in their team. So that's the basics of MLS. That is very much simplified. In terms of how kind of the youth side of things works, teams do have academies now, and that is something that's starting to emerge more in kind of real life football. So you can see here, we do have prospects that we can potentially call upon. But there's also something called the draft, and it's called the Super Draft. And it happens, I believe, in February or March time. And what happens is all the graduates from different colleges, universities, and such around the USA, the best prospects get put into a big pool. They compete in a combine, essentially, like a mini training camp for a few weeks prior to the draft. Scouts get to look at them, and then teams take it in turns in the Super Draft to pick out the best young talent and hopefully, secure them for their side. So, like other American sports, there's different assets that can be traded. So you can swap picks with other teams. So I might have a pick in the first round of the draft, and I can give this up and maybe exchange for trading with another player. There's other things that you can trade, for example, international player slots. When the MLS first introduced international player slots, each team was given 8 slots. These are 8 players who aren't US or Canadian nationals who can play in your sides. And over time, these have been traded and such. I believe in real life, Vancouver has 11 international player slots. Some teams have a very, very low amount on the flip side of things. Anyway, that's a very basic rundown of the US kind of, system and how things work in a very, very kind of brief, perhaps slightly incorrect nutshell. I know I have American viewers. If you want to correct me on anything I've said that's wrong, maybe, break down every little bit that's unique about US football in the comments, that would be absolutely amazing. You guys can probably do a lot better job than I can. But either way, this is going to be a fun challenge. It's a very different challenge because of the way the draft works, because you have to waiver some players, and because of the wage caps. It does leave us in a situation where we can't kind of just suddenly build a godly team kind of overnight. So it should be a fun challenge in that regard. In terms of our team, we'll just have a quick look at some of our big talents. So here we've got Mix Discarund, is Discarudjak. Learn to talk. Very good player for us, US international. You can see he has been paid $438,000 a year until 2021, and he's valued at $4.7 million. We have Jefferson Mena here, who I assume is one of our international players. He's a Colombian, 29 years old, pretty nice little centre-back. If we look here, we can't actually see if he's an international player or not because I guess it's the off-season, but a player who's definitely going to be good for us. We have Sean Johnson, 29-year-old goalkeeper, American international, again being paid $300,000 a year. Looks like a pretty decent player. We then have Frank Lampard, not got the pace he once had. I guess Pirlo is going to be the exact same, of course. Pirlo retiring, unfortunately, at the end of this year, so at the end of the calendar year, because that's how the US League works. So we won't see much of Andrea, unfortunately. We have Jakub Valentin. I guess that's how you say his name. Maybe it's Jacob, because he's French, not kind of Scandinavian. But either way, good player, this guy, 24 years old. How did he get on this year? He got 8 goals for us. As you can see, he was signed from Auxerre in France, and he looks like he's been a pretty decent little player. But anyway, looking at this squad, we don't seem too unbalanced. There's definitely a lack of defenders. That's something we're going to have to look at. In terms of where we finished in MLS last year, if we just have a look, we finished 5th in the Eastern Conference. Now, I'm not entirely sure how the league system works. I believe you have kind of 2 separate divisions, but you will play against teams in other divisions. I'm going to have to check the format of that for the start of next season, and I'll try and break that down simply. But the way things work is essentially you have 2 divisions that run alongside each other. The top 2 teams in each division get passes straight to a latter stage in the playoffs. I then believe the 4 teams who finish kind of 3rd to 6th in each division play one another, 2 extra teams go through, and then you're left with 8 teams which take part in the MLS playoff, with that all kind of ending up with the MLS Cup, I think. Again, still learning. You can see how you have the conference finals, and then I believe the 2 winners will meet in the MLS Cup. Anyway, that's a really simple breakdown. This is going to be a big learning experience for me. Hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this adventure, starting at this pretty decent franchise in New York City FC. I'm going to join you guys at the start of next season. We'll have a look. Perhaps I will have learned some new stuff that I forgot about and haven't mentioned thus far. And I will be back with you guys in just a second if my head hasn't exploded from trying to take in all the new rules that we have to deal with here. Okay guys, so we're back. I've somehow survived the off-season. I've absorbed in a lot of knowledge here. We're going to recap everything that you missed, as well as just explain the league structure a little bit more. Today we take on the San Jose Earthquakes in our first ever game in MLS at the Yankee Stadium, so that's going to be good. So as I mentioned, I wasn't 100% sure on the league format. I've now checked it. So as you can see here, there are 20 teams in MLS, and they're divided into 2 separate conferences made up of 10 teams each. We are in the Eastern Conference here, but there is also the Western Conference. The format for this competition is we play each team in our own conference twice, and we play each team in the Western Conference at least once. That makes 27 games in total. That makes 28 games in total, and then on top of that we play 6 extra games, 3 at home and 3 away, against teams within our own conference additionally. So as you can see, if we look at our fixtures, you can see some of the teams will be taken on 3 times in our own conference. We'll be taking on some teams like Orlando City twice in our own conference, because they're not part of the extra 6 games, and we also will take on each team in the Western Conference once. So we've got home ties against LA Galaxy, for example. So that's how the league works. Once that's all done, it's kind of what you'd expect to perhaps be a standard playoff format where, as I mentioned before, 3rd to 6th play one another. 2 teams will advance from 2 separate playoff matches. You'll be left with the top 2 teams who finish first and 2nd in their conference, as well as 2 extra teams who won the 3rd to 6th place playoffs. They then play until you have a winner of each conference playoff, and then each of those teams meet in the final. On top of that, there is an overall league table called the MLS Supporter Shield. This is awarded to the team who has the best kind of points total overall at the end of everything. Right, I think I've explained that. In terms of what's been going on at the club, well, we've actually done a fair bit of business, more than I expected perhaps, and there has been some transfers, so I guess we'll have a look at them to start things off. We have got a few players coming in and a few going out. We'll start with some of the ins. We brought in Damian Lowe here, who has now kind of settled into our team. He's just a player we brought in. He was waived by Seattle Sounders, so he was a player who was left outside their squad registration. I needed some defenders, so I managed to get him in, obviously on a free. We take his contract that he was previously on. The next player, Michael Stefani, was a player from Manchester City. Of course, New York City and Manchester City have an affiliation. We are able to take players on loan from Manchester City for nothing, and we managed to bring in Stefani here. In accordance with MLS rules, he does get paid the absolute minimum wage a player can be paid towards our cap, which is $70,000. Next player was Jeff Fisher. He was brought in the Super Draft. The Super Draft is, as I mentioned, is the big kind of draft whereby you have a set of all the young prospects who are at the various colleges and kind of junior teams who don't play for academies and MLS teams. The best of the best, they all get put together, and you're probably familiar with kind of stuff like the NFL draft, the NHL draft. It all works in a similar way in American sports, and as a result, we had 2 picks in the Super Draft. We didn't have any early picks, but Jeff Fisher was one of the players we drafted in, and the other player who we drafted in was Federico Mohamed. I will probably end up covering the draft next year, the next year's Super Draft. This year, however, we only had 2 picks because the previous manager decided to trade them away. So as a result, it wasn't too interesting to do. Anyway, the next player, Matias Ramirez, a player we've brought in on loan from Granada. Really good striker, this guy, a Chilean international, does take up one of our international player spots, but a pretty talented striker, and hopefully he will be banging in the goals for us. And then we come on to free transfers who we made using our allocation fund to pay for them. The first guy here, Maki Bagnac, we signed from, I believe it was Barcelona. It was indeed. This guy, really talented centre-back. We needed lots of defenders because we had a real lack of them. He was one of 2 who we brought in. The other centre-back was Daniil Henry, who we signed from West Ham. As you can see, Canadian international, this guy. Does count as an international player for us because we're not a Canadian-based team, despite being, obviously, in MLS. he counts towards our international player total, which I didn't know at the time of bringing him in, but at 25 years old, nice little player. You'll see that his wage is the most that a player who is not considered a designated player can be paid. But despite that, I think he's going to be a good player for us. And the last player we brought in, again, a senior player, not a kind of dedicated player, not one of our, special ones. We brought in Brad Guzan. Again, he's on the maximum wage he can be played as a senior player who isn't a designated player. 34 years old, this guy, goalkeeper, fantastic American player. I needed a goalkeeper because I did some trades and I was pretty happy to get him in. In terms of the outs, there's not much point in going through too many of these. I will just go over one, however, and that was Jacob, who I actually said I quite liked when we first looked at the squad. He ended up going to Burnley, and we sold him for $1.7 million, which for a player who came in on a free 2 seasons ago or a year and a half ago, I was pretty happy with that return. We have got a few other transfers which are going to be going through in the future. If we just have a look here, you can see Discarud, we're getting rid of. I'm sorry, Mix, you're going. We had an offer from a Mexican team now paying some very good money for him. The exact sum is $4.1 million. That money goes into our allocation fund, which we can then use to increase our salary cap to bring in some more players potentially. But it was very good money that we were getting for him, despite the fact he is one of the key players of the team. There just wasn't really room for him in the squad and he wanted to leave, so we decided to let him go. In terms of other transfers going in, well, we have Javi Munoz here coming from Real Madrid's Castilla team, obviously their B team. Good little player, this guy, 24 years old, contract expires, won't be joining us to the summer. But he's going to be on a fairly hefty wage when he comes to us, but I think he'll be a very nice player. The next player we brought in, Sandro, who I actually thought was a lot older than he is. He's only 29 here in 2019. We've signed him from QPR. He's coming on a senior contract. He is going to be paid that kind of maximum amount he can be paid. He's taken a fairly big wage cut to join us, but I'm pretty excited to get him in. We then have Cedric Yambere here, who we signed from Bordeaux. This guy is from the Central African Republic. Very good centre-back. Again, we needed some defenders. We've brought him in. Delighted to have him joining us in the summer. And last but not least, well, with Pirlo retiring, we had room to bring in a new designated player, a new all-star into our ranks. And I should point out that David Villa and Lampard are retiring at the end of this season, so we're going to have 2 more potential wildcards to come into our ranks. But here is the first one. I'm absolutely delighted by this. We brought in, I guess it's Adrien Rabiot. I probably butchered that pronunciation. I'm going to go check this because I really should know this guy's kind of pronunciation. He's a player who I believe is very hotly tipped in real life to really work well for PSG. You can see in our save, he never kind of broken into the PSG first team. His contract was running out at the end of the year. As a designated player, I wanted to get this guy in. At 23 years old, a really young prospect. In MLS, you see a lot of these designated players come in who are kind of the wrong side of 30. You're thinking of your Steven Gerrard at LA Galaxy, Robbie Keane, all sorts, and for a real odd one here, Darren Huckabee, who went to San Jose Earthquakes, who we're playing today. These are guys who are older, they're kind of at the end of their career, and I want to start bringing in potentially some designated players who can grow with the squad. This guy is definitely going to do that. Absolutely ecstatic to have him joining us. He won't be coming till the summer, unfortunately, but nevertheless, he's going to be a fantastic addition to the side. So we do have a few players joining there, and I have got a few concerns over the international player slots and how the kind of salary cap will work with those guys coming in. I feel like they are bridges that we will cross when we kind of reach them in the summertime. However, for now, our squad looks pretty darn solid. We have, of course, bolstered our defensive positions. You can see our system for this season is going to be a 3-4-1-2. I want to play fairly attacking. I want to go for it. We're going to have Lampard pulling the strings as a deep line playmaker, David Villa as our advanced forward. And yeah, you can see a lot of our new additions kind of slot straight into the team. So for example, we have Stefani, who's on loan from Manchester City at left mid. In the defensive department, we have Bradley Guzan in goal. We then have Bagnac, Mena and Henry making up our defenders. We have some very good centre-backs as well for this division. I'm really happy with the players we brought in, especially considering for the most part they've come in on relatively low wages, and obviously they have to because of the designated players, but not massive allocation fund fees either, which is nice. So our back three are fairly strong. I've already talked about Stefani. We do have Lampard, who's going to be playing at centre mid for us. We then have Mix Discarud, the good player who is going to be leaving us in the summer to join Deportivo Toluca, or I assume that's how you say it, the Mexican team. So we're going to use him while we can. He's a very good player, but we are going to have players obviously coming in to replace him. We then have Menenes. I've butchered this name, haven't I? Fernando Menendez. Menes. There's just I don't even know why I struggle with pronunciations. I don't know why. There, problem solved. I literally, there are some words that my brain just can't compute, and that was one of them. So we're now calling him Fernando. Anyway, the next player, Thomas McNara, nicer name. Although that is Namara Jack, not McNara. I should just give up, shouldn't I? I can't read. I feel like I'm dyslexic and I've just never been kind of diagnosed. That would explain so many things. Anyway, let's have a look at our strikers. Matias Ramirez is one of them, and then alongside him, obviously, David Villa. So that's kind of an introduction to our team. In terms of kind of other players worth keeping an eye out on, there are some fairly good players we have here. We have David Rojas, who is a good little left back. We're training him to play left mid, because we're not playing with left backs with our current system. He's 19 years old, some potential about him, not a bad player by any means. We have got some other players like Poku, who you can see here, who is a Ghanaian player. He's not even an international, which kind of surprises me. He's a very good player, quite a flexible player, can play centre mid and up front, out on the right wing as well, which is kind of nice. We have Jack McInnery, who again, another American. We have a fair few of these, despite the internationals that I brought in, but he's a very good striker, this guy. Not played at international level yet, but maybe he could have a good season for us and push on. And one last player we'll have a look at real quick is CJ Sapong, who is another American, very good player, can play right attacking mid, play striker, play left forward. All in all, I'm pretty happy with the squad that we have. Obviously, I've put my own kind of stamp on the team. I'm kind of looking forward to getting rid of David Villa and Lampard at the end of the year, just because of the kind of crazy wages they're on, the fact they're designated players who aren't the best players in our squad anymore because of old age kicking in. It'll be nice to free up the wages there that they kind of occupy at the moment and really add our own stamp to the squad. But anyway, that's what's been going on in terms of the squad, in terms of where we're at. In terms of the tactic itself, I've not actually added any instructions yet. We're going to do that here. So the system that we're going to be using is going to be similar to the Lewis FC tactic you guys may remember from FM15. It's not going to be too crazy to begin with. I really want to kind of keep things simple and evolve this tactic as we go. I don't really know what to expect from our team this year. It's going to be I guess, an interesting one to say the least, how we will get on as a team. I'm going to be learning as we go because I've never managed in MLS. I'm sure I've probably broken 1,000,001 squad rules, and with some of our players coming in the summer, we're going to have some problems there. We're going to live and learn from our mistakes. It's going to be a little bit different, I guess, here. I think we're going to go with some fairly simple instructions just to begin with. Some people ask me why I don't use more instructions a lot of the time when I show off my tactics. I sometimes find they overcomplicate things. I've not got any specific player instructions just yet either. Instead, I'm really looking for these players to show me what they've got. You know, a few games in, we'll review our system, see how it's working, and work kind of things out from there. So yeah, this is the team. This is the new challenge ahead of us. We are in America. I've got to be honest, I still feel way out of my depth. I've tried to explain everything as much as I can, and I appreciate for some people the amount of talking that I've done this episode. Some of the rules, they're going to all sound very alien. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to try and help me out, I would appreciate, if you explain some of the rules for people who watch in a better way than I can in verbal format. But let's get into our first game of our MLS career. It's going to be against San Jose Earthquakes. We are at home. We're playing at the Yankee Stadium, which is, of course, a baseball ground that the New York Yankees baseball team use, that franchise. I don't believe in FM. They're going to have some kind of crazy kind of baseball stadium that we have a look at, unfortunately. Instead, we're going to be kind of having our standard square stadium. One more transfer I've just remembered that we had that I forgot to talk about was, of course, with Guzan going in, Johnson, who was our previous first-team goalkeeper, has left the side. We actually used him in a swap deal to get 2 more international player slots. With the players who were coming in the summer, I needed to get some international player slots freed up. So we have got those coming our way. And in return for those international player slots, I had to give them $500,000 allocation fund. Not $500,000, sorry. I think it was $75,000 allocation fund. Johnson. And we also gave them 2 third-round picks in upcoming super drafts. Again, if this sounds like I'm speaking a foreign language, it kind of is. I'm sorry to say. I wish I could explain it better. And hopefully, over the course of the next few episodes, talking in detail about what's going on in America, you guys will slowly get up to speed. The big thing you need to understand for now is basically that we have a limited squad size. which is limited not only to 28 players, but also the total wage of all those players added together. We have our kind of wildcard players, who are the players who can be paid as much as we want. And obviously we have the draft, which is coming around at the start of every season in February, the super draft at least, where we can kind of pick up the best young prospects for the coming season based on picks that we are awarded as a result of our league position the previous season. Right, so far this game we've not had a bad start, although San Jose Earthquakes did have the first clear-cut chance of the game. I've not actually played with 3 centre-backs yet in FM16, so we are going to be experimenting, throughout the early stages of our time here. In terms of our board expectations, I believe they want a top-half finish. Last year, they did reach the kind of preliminary playoffs of the conference. In the Eastern Conference, out of the 10 teams, I believe New York City FC finished 6th. However, they were knocked out in the wildcard playoffs, which is kind of where third place to 6th place play each other for a spot in the final 4 of the conference. So that's kind of what's going on there. In terms of my expectations for this year, I think it's going to be a bit of a transitional year. With the players like David Villa and Lampard going at the end of this season, I'm kind of relishing and looking forward to, I guess, being able to get in some new designated players, some fresh blood in our team. And of course, we have got some pretty talented players joining us midway through the season in the summer. So anyway, we are on the attack here. Fernando lays it off, Wynn clearing it away. Mackie will mop it up, and now Stefani down the left. Deloney from Manchester City whips it in. Cleared away, but Fernando putting it back into the box. Mena, can we keep our pressure up here? Lampard playing deep line playmaker is going to be an interesting player to keep an eye on. And Ramirez, Deloney from Granada with a chance there to score. Fry, though, a nice little save for him, but that was a clear-cut chance going our way. Looking at the stats early on, we're putting up a fairly good performance here against the San Jose Earthquakes. I will also just check before the end of this episode kind of season expectations and kind of the odds, so we kind of know the big teams to watch out for in our division. We of course are going to have New York Red Bulls in our division. That is kind of the derby, I guess, for this new franchise in MLS. So we probably will end up live commenting, a few of those games. I'm not sure if we're going to be playing them twice or 3 times this season. Hopefully it'll be 3 times. It'd be nice to play our rivals a few times, but we do need to learn to defend, and the San Jose Earthquakes with Carlinios grabbing the goal for them there. Demote us to bottom of our division. Not the best start here. Looking at it, San Jose Earthquakes, they have been on top in this game. We've been struggling just a little bit, and they've kind of made that early pressure pay. I'm actually going to make a change quite early on here. We're going to change it up. We're going to go with Lampard as a deep line playmaker, centre defensive mid. He's now going to be our Pirlo. I was kind of looking forward to having Pirlo before I realised he was going to retire when I first had the job interview here, because I did have a look at their squad, New York City FC, just to see who was around, and I like the idea of maybe actually playing Pirlo as a regista, as of course he has played for a number of years. Unfortunately, with his retirement, Frank Lampard is the next best thing. Unfortunately for us, however, we're 1-0 down in this first half. It's not been the best performance. McNamara, or Namara even, I'll get there eventually. Mick Namara, not looking too fit at the moment, so we're going to take him off. We'll bring on Poku, the Ghanaian centre mid. Hopefully he can have an impact for us, but first game of the season, there's a few tired legs. We only played 4 games in the pre-season. I didn't want to get the players too tired too early on. Perhaps I should have organised a few more games, but I was kind of preoccupied with everything else going on at the club. It kind of feels like in coming to America, I'm playing a completely different game. The kind of way the squad management has to be done is different. Kind of the draft system keeps things interesting. The league system itself, fairly unique. And it doesn't really feel like Football Manager at the moment, but it's a fun challenge. I believe to get to the North American Champions League, you have to reach your conference final. So I believe it's 4 teams in the USA qualify for the Champions League in North America every year. And of course, our big rivals in that competition are going to be the Mexican teams. But anyway, we're on the attack here. Mena, can we salvage a point here? 10 minutes left. Mena out on the right, whips it in. Back post, Stefani Ramirez. He really should have scored there. He should have had a better effort than that. I think it may have even deflected wide. But the defender with a nice little block there. And, well, with 5 minutes left, it's not been the best start to our time here in America. I was hoping that we were going to get off to winning ways. Obviously, we've made a pretty big step up in coming here. I'm sure in real life, if a player or a manager from New Zealand was to be appointed as New York City FC manager, there would be eyebrows raised. We've made a big step up, of course, off the back of 2 Oceanic Champions Leagues. There's a little bit of a fanfare behind us. But this is a bit of a down way, I guess, to start this kind of campaign. We are going to go down 1-0. San Jose taking the W. I'm going to try and use some American phrases here. Not happy with that performance. Unfortunately for us, that does see us go bottom of our conference after just one game. As I mentioned, we'll just have a quick look at kind of the conference and kind of where teams are predicted to finish. Looking at the season preview, we are predicted to finish 9th out of 20. The San Jose Earthquakes, we probably should be beating them. They're predicted to finish 16th overall, kind of in the MLS Supporter Shield, which is kind of the overall division. You can have a look at the best 11 for last year. Perlo was up there, as was Discarud, who of course for us, or Discarud, who for us is going to be leaving in the summer. So we need to make the most of him while we can. There weren't any other of our players here. Just a quick look. Who are our players to watch? Apparently Mena's one of our men to watch. That kind of surprises me. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode here, guys. It's been a long episode. I appreciate for you guys who have never seen MLS before, I probably have sounded like I'm talking a foreign language this episode. If you've got any questions that you want to ask about the division, I will attempt to answer them. If you're an American expert in MLS, you could do me a massive favour by answering questions as well, because I have no doubt there'll be a fair few. If you've watched at this point in the video, if you want to make a comment, let me know who your favourite player was in New Zealand. Maybe let me know your expectations for how we'll get on this year in America. I'd love to have your thoughts on it. And yeah, that's going to wrap things up from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, of course, smash the like button. And other than that, it is me, Jack, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.